What if I told you that a single wall of water, taller than any skyscraper ever built, could erase entire coastlines in under 15 minutes? A mega-tsunami, 500 meters high, that's over 1,600 feet, crashing inland faster than you could pack a bag. It's not science fiction. It's a scenario scientists rarely talk about publicly, but the data is there. Hidden beneath the ocean are unstable cliffs, ancient volcanoes, and fault lines, all ticking like a silent clock. And if just one collapses, the wave it sends could swallow cities, airports, hospitals, everything. The last time something close happened, 170,000 people vanished in one night. What would happen if it hit today? Would anyone survive? In the next few minutes, you're going to hear something you'll never forget. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. We live in an age where satellites scan the oceans 24/7, where early warning systems promise to keep us safe, and where most people believe a disaster of biblical proportions simply can't happen anymore. We've built concrete cities, trusted in data, and told ourselves we've outgrown the age of nature's wrath. But here's the uncomfortable truth: the ocean doesn't care how advanced we think we are. Beneath its surface lie forces we can't predict and barely understand. Today, the Atlantic coastline of the United States is home to over 100 million people. Major cities like New York, Miami, and Boston sit just a few feet above sea level. And just offshore, hidden beneath thousands of meters of dark, cold water, are geological formations so unstable, scientists have quietly debated them for decades. The Canary Islands, the Azores, even the steep submarine cliffs near Puerto Rico. One sudden landslide, one shift of underwater rock, could displace millions of tons of water in seconds. And when that water moves, it doesn't stop. It becomes a wall, a surge, a moving mass the size of a mountain. Today, we call these events low probability, high impact, which is another way of saying we don't know when it will happen, only that it can. And the terrifying part? There may be no warning. Not minutes, not seconds, just silence, followed by the roar of something unstoppable. As our cities grow taller and our coastlines denser, we must ask, are we building toward the future or waiting for disaster? Because if a 500-meter wave were to form right now, how many of us would even have a chance? The fear of a mega-tsunami didn't begin with Hollywood. It began with a quiet paper published in 2001 by two respected geologists, Dr. Stephen Ward and Dr. Simon Day. Their focus? A volcanic island off the coast of northwest Africa, La Palma, part of the Canary Islands. What they found was deeply unsettling. Beneath its lush forests and scenic villages lies a growing fault line, one that could, during a future eruption, cause half the island's western flank to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean. If that happens, the ocean would be struck by more than 500 billion tons of rock, instantly displacing water and sending a wave racing westward. Within 6 hours, it could hit the U.S. East Coast. Not a ripple, not a storm surge. A wall of water, as tall as the Statue of Liberty stacked 5 times, moving at the speed of a jetliner. And here's the part that still haunts researchers. There's historical evidence this has happened before. Around 73,000 years ago, the flank of the Fogo volcano in Cape Verde collapsed, sending a wave over 240 meters high crashing onto nearby islands. Scientists have found marine sediment and debris far inland, where the ocean never should have reached. And yet, the La Palma scenario is just one of several. Across the globe, in Alaska, Indonesia, the Pacific Northwest, other unstable slopes and hidden geological monsters wait, quietly eroding, slowly fracturing. The question is not just if they'll fall, it's when. And when they do, will anyone be ready? As science quietly pieces the evidence together, one truth becomes clear: nature doesn't warn us with sirens. It warns us with silence. And sometimes, silence is the last thing we hear. Let's talk numbers, because they're harder to ignore. If La Palma's western flank collapsed into the Atlantic, the initial wave could tower over 500 meters. That's taller than the Empire State Building. Within minutes, it would slam into the nearby African coast. But that's just the beginning. The wave wouldn't stop. It would travel across the ocean at nearly 500 miles per hour, the speed of a commercial jet. Within 3 to 6 hours, it could reach Florida, the Carolinas, New York. By that point, the wave might shrink to 30 or 50 meters in height, but don't let the numbers fool you. That's still a 10-story wall of destruction, pushing miles inland. Now imagine this. Over 40% of the U.S. population lives along coastal counties. Hospitals, retirement homes, highways, airports, all concentrated near the waterline. The warning systems we trust? They might not be fast enough, or might not work at all if the collapse happens without seismic activity. And here's something chilling. In 1958, a similar event happened in Lituya Bay, Alaska. A massive landslide fell into the bay, triggering a wave that reached 1,720 feet high. That's not a typo. It ripped trees off mountains and tossed fishing boats like toys. Fortunately, it happened in a remote area. But what if it hadn't? Today, we build bigger, closer, denser. We assume water is calm, predictable. But deep beneath the ocean, nature builds its traps in silence, pressure mounting over centuries, ready to release in seconds. And when it does, there will be no countdown. Just a shadow on the horizon, growing taller, growing louder. And by the time you see it, it's already too late. Here's the part no one talks about, the moment that shakes even seasoned scientists. A mega-tsunami doesn't behave like a regular wave. It doesn't curl, it doesn't crash gently. It's not made of surface water. It's a wall of the entire ocean, rising from the seafloor to the sky, pressing forward with the weight of mountains. And unlike wind-driven waves, it can travel thousands of miles with barely any loss of energy. Why? Because it moves through the water, not just on top of it. Think of it like an invisible fist, silent, deep, fast, until it slams into shore. And here's the twist. We may not even know it's coming. If the trigger is a landslide, not an earthquake, then there may be no shaking, no alert, no warning, just the sudden retreat of the ocean. And when that happens, you may have 90 seconds, maybe less. Some experts believe that mega-tsunamis could also be triggered by things we've barely begun to understand, like methane explosions under the seabed, or even melting permafrost destabilizing underwater slopes. These are still theories, but not wild ones. In fact, several geological anomalies seen on ocean maps today, massive gouges and scars, suggest something big has happened before. Something sudden and devastating. But here's what makes this most terrifying. Despite years of debate, funding for large-scale detection and simulation of these threats remains limited. Not because they're impossible, but because they're uncomfortable. We don't like to face what we can't control, but ignoring it won't make it go away. So ask yourself, how do we prepare for something we don't want to admit is real? Despite the silence in public conversations, behind closed doors, research is happening. Oceanographers, volcanologists, and geophysicists are quietly mapping the most unstable parts of our seafloor. High-resolution sonar, satellite gravimetry, and deep-sea drones are now uncovering terrifying details, cracks miles long, underwater cliffs hanging at impossible angles, and sediment layers that show signs of violent past collapses. One of the most studied zones today is the Cumbre Vieja volcano on La Palma. Scientists have installed ground motion sensors, GPS trackers, and seafloor pressure monitors to detect even the slightest shift. But the system is far from complete, and funding often dries up as soon as the news cycle moves on. In the United States, NOAA has developed a system called DART, Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis. These floating buoys detect pressure changes deep below the surface, giving us early warning if a wave begins to move. But even this network wasn't built with mega-tsunamis in mind. It's calibrated for typical seismic waves, not the fast, silent surge from a collapsing island or submarine landslide. And when it comes to public readiness, most coastal communities run drills for hurricanes, not tsunamis. Most people don't even know what natural signs to look for: a sudden retreat of the sea, a strange roaring sound, animals fleeing inland. We have the tools. We have the knowledge. What we don't have is urgency. Not until it's too late. And while satellites may catch the movement from above, and sensors may register a shift below, the final decision to act, to move, to escape will still depend on how quickly we believe the warning. There's always more than one version of the truth. While some scientists focus on natural instability, landslides, volcanoes, tectonic shifts, others ask harder questions. What if human activity is making things worse? Satellite data shows increasing pressure on fault zones due to rising ocean temperatures and deep-sea drilling. Could we be weakening the very foundations of the seafloor? Some researchers believe that by mining rare earth minerals or injecting chemicals into underwater rock layers, we may be accelerating the collapse of fragile geological formations without even realizing it. Then there are those who go further, suggesting that early warning signs have been suppressed, not out of conspiracy, but fear of panic, economic loss, insurance collapse. Because if governments admitted that cities like New York or Miami could disappear in a single wave, what would people do? Leave? Sell? Riot? The truth is, we've built modern civilization along the water's edge for trade, for beauty, for convenience. But in doing so, we've ignored ancient wisdom. Indigenous cultures once believed that the ocean remembers, that it reclaims what's taken too much. And here we are, pipelines, skyscrapers, cruise ships, all leaning into the sea, as if daring it to respond. Is the mega-tsunami a rare act of nature, or the inevitable result of everything we've built? Progress has always come at a price. The only question is, who pays it, and when? We chase energy, technology, growth, but we never ask what holds it all up. What happens if the foundation cracks? And when it does, will we blame nature or ourselves? The wave came without a scream, just a low, distant thunder, like a freight train approaching through fog. In under 5 minutes, entire cities were gone. Coastal highways vanished. Airports flooded. Emergency alerts, delayed, misfired, too late. Survivors described a silence so unnatural it made the hairs on their arms rise, and then, nothing but black water. In the days that followed, the world changed, not just in geography, but in understanding. The internet collapsed along the coast. Power grids failed. Millions displaced. But the deepest impact wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Trust eroded. How could the most advanced societies on Earth be so blind? Governments launched investigations. Scientists testified. Insurance markets crashed. And in the rubble, a hard truth emerged. We were never ready. Because our systems weren't built for something this big. We had warnings. We had science. But we didn't have will. And when the sea finally receded, it left behind more than destruction. It exposed a vulnerability we never wanted to see. Communities once driven by convenience now question their entire future. Should we rebuild or retreat? Can you really live where the ocean can erase everything in an hour? Climate scientists warned that rising seas, melting ice, and warming oceans would only make future events more likely. The planet had changed, and now it demanded we change, too. But the question remained, would we? Or would we forget until the next wave comes? Because in every choice to expand, to build, to push forward, we never stop to ask, what happens when nature pushes back? And when it does, will we call it tragedy or consequence? At the core of it all lies a choice, not just about where we live, but how we think. For centuries, humanity has walked a fine line between brilliance and blindness. We build higher, we move faster, we innovate without pause, but rarely do we stop to consider the foundation beneath it all. Nature is not the enemy, it's the stage. And we've been dancing on a fault line, convinced the floor will never give way. But now, faced with rising oceans, unpredictable geology, and the raw scale of what we've uncovered, the illusion is gone. The question is no longer can this happen, it's will we let it? Will we use our knowledge to retreat from danger, or will pride keep us anchored to the edge? The technologies we've built can save lives, but only if we listen to them. The science is there, buried in research papers, satellite data, ignored reports. But data doesn't move governments. People do. And here's the paradox. The smarter we become, the more we believe we're in control. But true intelligence is knowing when to let go, when to adapt. Because maybe the real danger isn't the wave, it's our refusal to move. If a 500-meter wall of water isn't enough to make us reconsider where and how we live, what will be? This isn't just about one island or one coastline. It's about who we choose to be in the face of truth. Will we evolve with humility, foresight, courage? Or will we keep building castles in the sand, hoping the tide forgets to rise? If you're still watching, then maybe you feel it too. That quiet unease. That voice in the back of your mind whispering, what if this really happens? Maybe it's not today. Maybe not in our lifetime. But then again, maybe tomorrow. Maybe while you sleep. The terrifying thing about a mega-tsunami is that it doesn't need your permission. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It just arrives. No warning. No pause. Just one moment, one sound, one glance toward the horizon, and everything changes. And if it comes, it won't care where you live, how much money you make, or what you plan to do next week. It will just come, quietly, like truth. You see, this story, it's not about science fiction. It's about what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore. We live in a world built on fragile ground, and we pretend it's solid. But deep down, we know better. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. If you saw the ocean disappear right now, if you heard that low, unnatural roar in the distance, would you know what to do? Would your family? Your neighbors? Or would you freeze because no one ever told you this could happen? We started this story with a question. A 500-meter wave, could anyone survive? Now, here's a harder one. Why are we waiting to find out the answer the hard way? Because sometimes, the scariest disasters aren't the ones we can't predict. They're the ones we won't believe.